Welcome everybody. This is Hugh Massie, the CEO and founder of DNA Behavior. Today I'm delighted to be doing another Identity EQ interview, and I've got with me Jeff Morris, who lives in California and is the CEO and founder of the DreamSmart Academy. Jeff is very passionate about human behavior, decoding human behavior and designing solutions, using it, helping people get to the next stage in their lives, leveraging their talents. And he's been building a behavioral sciences division inside the DreamSmart Academy for these purposes. So, Jeff, again, welcome. And why don't we just get started with you telling us a little bit about your career journey to date. I think you've had a very interesting background, and how you've built up to founding and evolving the DreamSmart Academy over the past few years.
Sure. Number one, Hugh, I'm excited to be a part of this interview series, and I want to just thank you personally for taking the time to continue coach and mentor me and Kenyatta and the others in our DreamSmart team. So thank you for the opportunity. My background, really, I'll start when I went into the Marine Corps in 1986. In 1988 or so, they sent me to Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, which was an interesting training for me, considering I was from the city. Right, I had never really fired weapons before until I went into the Marine Corps. As a matter of fact, Hugh, they said, man, brothers don't really graduate from sniper school. And I said, why is that? They said, you guys are, from the city, you don't do a lot of sniping as far as we know. So that was an interesting background. And I think in my profile, it talks about my competitive nature. That statement alone made me want to graduate sniper school. But some of the things we did while I was there really has helped me in my current position as the president and the founder of DreamSmart Academy. We used to write something called a training exercise without troops. And this was a detailed analysis of a mission, from every angle of a mission. Today, we would call that a business plan in the real world, right? But back then in the Marine Corps application, it was called a TEWT, a training exercise without troops. And that served me well. And looking back at my profile, I was able to analyze very quickly. And that's why I was able to be successful in the school and as a chief scout for a sniper platoon. It was very interesting training for me. Got out from there. I got out in about 1992 or so, but I've been an entrepreneur ever since. Done everything from wash cars to be a part of a family that we had a transportation service. I was married and had 3 hair salons at one time. But in 2008 or so, when the market crashed, I was in the mortgage business and I had to reinvent myself. And at the time, I was a really good friend with the future CEO and president of chairman of the board for the Jack in the Box Corporation. His name is Lenny Kama. And he goes, Jeff, man, I really trust you and how you do business. I could do business with anybody, but I choose to do business with you because I trust you. He goes, as you're thinking about reinventing yourself, maybe think about something with training and education and money, because you're really good at educating people about the basics of money. And that's how I got into what I started doing in 2010. And eventually in 2014, when I met DNA Behavior, we married the field of not just money management, but how we tie behavior and emotions into how people spent and saved and invested their money. And I don't even know if you remember this conversation, but it was in 2014 with both Leon was just new to the team and you, and we talked about the vision of being able to bring practical human insights to the masses, right? To make it so that the everyday layman could understand and decode behavior, because it was at the center of what was causing most likely friction or drama in their lives. So we evolved from there now into a full behavioral science division where we have incredible team members, Dr. Greg Spencer, who's doing work in our family services division, Kenyatta Turner, who's all over the place doing services around the world. Our COO is providing this behavioral insight, Hugh, into the Special Offenders Program and the Texas Juvenile Justice Division. And we're being requested to have more people come out and do that type of training. So it's been quite a journey. I go to sleep every night going, man, I'm just having fun with this stuff. It's amazing for me.
So how much the financial literacy part, you're baking that into the center of everything that you're doing?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Hugh.
Because money is a a huge force in our lives, and at the end of the day, we've all got to know how to deal with it, don't we?
Absolutely. Well, again, that was our first tie into DNA. Is we had some constructs around behavior, but we didn't have a validated instrument that we could present to everybody and not be ashamed of the science. So when we found DNA behavior, we said, man, what a great tool that we could use to teach neuroscience, behavioral finance, and all of the things that tie to money, and be able to have this validation around it. That was the beginning of our relationship, but absolutely, it's baked into everything that we do.
So before you found us, and you were already in the financial literacy space, as you said, you'd done mortgage lending work, but you also had a SpendSmart company as well. So you were focused on that. But just tell us a little bit about, the issues you were seeing in financial literacy that people needed to be aware of, particularly from a behavioral point.
Well, from the beginning, Dr. Greg Spencer and I realized that, I think we did some research, Hugh, and we found like 800 financial literacy programs. That's a lot of competition.
Yep.
So we had to find something that was different around the marketplace. And we quickly latched on to the issue of behavioral finance, right? Neurofinance, the art of teaching people to make correct decisions based on specific personality traits. And so we started to integrate that. And we actually came up with, Dr. Greg came up with a term called moneytudes. And it was your attitudes toward money. And I think we had spenders and savers, givers and builders. And we would go around the country, Hugh, and we would put these big yellow like sticky boards up. And we would say, what would be some of the positive characteristics of maybe a spender? And what would be maybe some of the negative characteristics that would be associated with a spender? And no matter where we went to a Black community or a brown community, or we did a corporate environment training, those characteristics, all those keywords always showed up. So we evolved it from the first four: spenders, givers, savers, and builders. People go, well, if there's a saver, there has to be a giver. If there's a giver, there has to be a taker. If there's a taker, so it evolved into these 9 personality types that we could tie traits to and associate it back to how people were handling their money. And at the time, for us, it was revolutionary. Yeah, we actually we won an award in 2011 from Financial Planning Magazine. Even though we weren't financial planners, their first pro bono award, I think there was like 2,500 corporations that was entered into this contest. And we got an email and said that we had won something, and we thought it was a joke. But we were one of 2 of 2,500 companies selected for this pro bono award for the work that we were doing in the community around literacy. So it was quite a journey for us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Jeff, in getting into the financial literacy space, you went in there out of a passion for it, but and you were dealing with the money issues. But when you went into the market, you could see there were 800 or more players. So that's what in the financial literacy space, that's what pushed you across to the human behavior part, because you did research to see where could you be different.
Absolutely.
So that's where this really grew from, was building a market differentiation. And then as you've gone along with it, you've obviously seen how it's made a difference within people to understand these traits. And you built the program up from that. From there,
after we really got into the really researching, and once we found this tool that we could tie in science to and have validation around, and we didn't have to hide from the science, we quickly realized then that we needed to also make another pivot. because finances was just one part of who a person was holistically. So we said, okay, we now need to look at how we would develop the whole person holistically. And so we said, man, okay, now it's time to start the DreamSmart Academy, right? A place where a person could come to get life skills training, right? That will last a lifetime. And behavioral finance was just one of those areas that we focused on. And we've built out a life skills curriculum at this point from the initial foray into behavioral finance.
So that's really where you moved along from Spend Smart, that was more behavioral finance, or had become that in the financial literacy space. Then you figured out, okay, if people are going to really develop and actually become more financially literate, not only do they need to be aware of the financial behaviors, they need to be aware of their behaviors, full stop.
That was a genesis for us. That was the light bulb went on at that point for us.
And they need to get in touch with their life goals. Their dreams are important, because the dreams in a way are a pathway out, or a pathway to growth at the end of the day.
If you don't dream, Hugh, there's little hope for long-term success. And that's why we came up with the term DreamSmart, really, because the true north that we have in our life, I know you're going to ask me some question later, really is tied to the dream of a person, the goals of a person, right? When we can point someone true north as soon as possible in their life, that's why we start with, some of the youngest in our society, starting in about 5th grade or so. When we can give them purpose or significance or this true north, something that they can latch onto, it just makes decisions in life much easier, right? You know what you do want, what you don't want. So when things come out of left field or right field, you kind of go, nah, here's my true path that I need to stay forward on. So the dream was and we still use that today as our true north for where we want to go and how we get there.
Because in a way, Jeff, you can't just tell someone to stop spending money. If they're a spender and they're spending all their money, and you say, well, you've got to stop it and you've got to have a budget.
Yes.
That might work for a few weeks.
Right.
But at some point, they've got to have more than that to hang on to strive towards.
That's right.
And that's really what you're doing with the dreams, helping them, if they get their dreams set and identified, then they can create some significance in their life. There's more purpose, and now there's a reason to save money and to be more financially disciplined. I mean, that's how I would put it together, or how I've always just on my own explained it to people.
Hugh, 100% right. For us, when we looked at budgeting, right, we all know that budgeting is a great concept. But now that we can tie it to behavior, unless you're analytical and you're very disciplined, budgets don't work for 90% of the people, right? You could get a class today on budgeting and you could budget for a week, but by next Saturday, the checkbook's out of balance because we haven't dealt with the underlying issue of emotions and behavior. And we call it your money story, right? We actually have people evolve their money story. When we have them talk about this relationship with money, there's a relationship that you have, good or bad. Have you dated it, right? Have you divorced it? Are you still married to it? It's a metaphor that we use, but we really help people dive into the core of who they are from their money story and some of the other things that we do in our financial literacy training.
And if you know the core of who you are, you can build the right money story, but you're not going to build it from just looking at a checkbook. That's a reality. So if we take this, that you've built this, fabulous business DreamSmart Academy, it's evolved over a period of time. But if we look at you, Jeff, personally, as the the behavioral superpower leader, if you want to call it that, inside the DreamSmart Academy, the activator that's been, that's triggering these changes. And your DNA style is a reflective thinker, and you're very coming with that. Your strong traits are very what we call fast-paced, rational, pretty objective, analytical, and then also on top of that, very pioneering, right? And quite creative as well. So sort of piece together that you you've already been doing this work for a while around people's habits, their behaviors. You land on DNA, you see your report, and it tells you some of these things. What was your reaction to that?
It was eye-opening for me, right? It goes back to this identity piece, something that you could easily identify with, right? A reflective thinker. It wasn't a color, it wasn't a dot, it wasn't a series of whatever. It was a set of words that I could tie to an identity that made me feel unique. I'm a reflective thinker. And what does that mean? That means I value accuracy and precision and detail and analysis. And as I share with you my previous experience in the Marine Corps when I was a sniper, those are all the traits that a sniper needs, right? A CFO of a company, right? In my own entrepreneurial pursuits, I was a CFO for an organization. And those are, again, all of the talents that a CFO needs: accuracy, precision, detail, analysis. So throughout my life, without having the term reflective thinker, I was already that. But, I forget who says that quote: there's two significant days in your life, right? The day that you were born and the day you find out what you were supposed to do. That's the day I found out, hey, what my identity was. And I could build my life and my practice around those two very simple words.
But also, coming with that is a very strong pioneering drive.
Mm.
You're extremely competitive. So how does that play out in the planning? Because I think I've heard very clearly today you being a sniper, building the plans as a sniper, really being very disciplined in that when you have to be, otherwise you probably get killed.
Absolutely.
Or you kill the team. But tell me about how the pioneering part plays out here in what you're doing and your competitive streak.
Well, being competitive, I grew up playing sports, right? My dad was my coach. My dad is my hero. So I grew up playing basketball, football, baseball, anything with the ball. I probably played it. Marbles, right? I played marbles. So I've grown up being competitive, and I'm just not going to quit. I tell people, if you come up against me, you better be prepared to go to the mat, because I don't quit, right? I may not be the smartest person in the room, but you're not going to outwork me. And that's part of my competitive nature, or naturally, but that's who my dad was, right? He'd be up at 3 o'clock in the morning. He owned his own construction business, but he got us up at 3 o'clock in the morning, Hugh, and we would deliver the newspapers because he wanted us to work. He said, you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, we'll deliver the papers, you go to school, I'll go to work. And then he came home and he was the coach. And when I was young, I didn't understand how he had the energy to do it. But my energy and my passion and my drive, I get naturally, but I get a lot of it because of what I've seen from my father.
So it's really a lot of discipline that comes that you've got from your father has come into play. And you're very driven to the goals. Again,
that competitive nature. Once we set a goal, as a person, I'm going to do what I can to make that goal happen. Right? The DreamSmart Academy, SpendSmart.org was a dream. Right? We made that dream a reality. DreamSmart Academy was another dream. And what's unique, Hugh, about the DreamSmart Academy is we're a Black-owned behavioral science firm. There's not a lot of those people in the country.
No.
Right? When we have a Dr. Greg Spencer, an African-American, Terry Hawkins, who's an African-American, Kenyatta Turner, African-American, and we add the Ted McLymans and the Clayton Hoyles, we really have built a diverse team of people, really unified around the vision of, how do we decode human behavior so we can help people be better. But that pioneering vision of having a Black-owned behavioral science firm is powerful, and is opening and unlocking some doors that are unique because of the way that we interpret this information and we make it accessible to just the layperson. So if we, Jeff,
pull together your talents, which you've used to build, DreamSmart Academy into this behavioral sciences firm. As you say, you're very unique in the sense that you're the only Black-owned behavioral sciences firm out there. You're very deep into communities, in a range of communities. What do you see as your standout talent? What's the activity that you do that's 10 out of 10? You do it comfortably, you love doing it, that really you're the greatest at, and you feel at ease doing it?
Well, here's how I identify a strength, right? It's the thing that you do, or a talent. It's the thing that you do with excellence with the least amount of effort. Like, I know I do some certain things really well. I coach, train, educate, and mentor. I do those things really well. I can do them in my sleep all day, and I'm really good at it. So I don't attempt to do very many things outside of that scope. I could probably be good at it because I'm disciplined, right? And I don't quit. But I go to bed every night knowing that when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to coach, I'm going to train, I'm going to mentor, I'm going to educate somebody. So what we really do at the DreamSmart Academy, Hugh, is really get to the core of who a person is.
Yeah.
Right. It's that question of the question of behavioral identity. The DreamSmart Academy, we're dedicated to helping people understand who they are at the core of their being. Here's what we say: know who you are, be who you are, and do what you are, right?
Now, how do you hold them accountable to doing that? I mean, what I'm trying to do is get to the underlying talent. When you're coaching, mentoring, educating people,
sure,
you're in a way guiding them, pushing them in a certain way because of your, fast-paced nature as well. Your goal-driven, pioneering nature. Something's going on when you're in that zone of doing that.
Sure. So in the zone, Hugh, we're going to ask some questions of everyone to get started in our process, right? Our discovery process. We have a 3-step process that we're talking about. Discovery, right? Answering some of life's most basic questions. Who am I, right? Who should I be? Who can I become, right? Who am I now? What's my significant contribution I can make to the world, right? What are my unique gifts, talents, and abilities? We call it a discovery process. And we start that discovery process with the behavioral analysis, because once we can understand that piece of a person, now we can build out what we call the unleashing of the profile and the unleashing of the gifts, talents, and abilities. So step 1, we discover. The next session, we call it a uncovering, right? Because it's always been there, right? This gift, talent, ability has always been there. And then in our unleashing phase, we seek to now maximize. No problem. So in our 3-phase solution, we're looking at first discovering, right? This talent that already lies beneath. We're going to uncover that talent because it's always been there. But now that we have this anchor that we can tie purpose to and significance to, now we can uncover that talent. And in this third phase of our process, we talk about now unleashing that upon the world, right? We call it a superpower, unleashing your behavior superpowers upon the world. Let me ask you a question real quick, Hugh, that we ask everybody. Some people can't relate to this, but maybe you can. Are you a comic book fan at all?
Not really.
Not, but do you know who Superman is?
Yep.
So let me ask you a question. When does Superman first become Superman?
When he's born.
He was born Superman, but how did he show up to the world?
Well, it's Superman.
He showed up to the world as Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Clark Kent was his costume, but he was always Superman. Yeah. And that's the premise of how we coach people, right? You show up to the world in your social, emotional, and your learned behavior, but what's really operating beneath is your Superman or your Superwoman, that 90% of you that people don't see. That's really what's driving the core of who you are.
So really what you're doing is, and your superpower in here is in the discovery process, you're asking the tough questions of people to help them get below the surface to the core of who they are. That's really what you're doing, is you're prepared to go below the surface, and I presume quite quickly, to get to the core of who they are.
Absolutely. We call it below the waterline work, right?
Yeah.
We call it below the waterline work. When you look at that iceberg, everybody wants to work at above the waterline because that's the part that everybody sees, but that's the part that gets the least amount of transformation. When you work on the 90% that you can't see, that's where you get your greatest productivity and efficiency from.
So your superpower really is going below the waterline with people quickly.
That's what we do. We tell people, let's take off the mask. And whether we're working with young people, and we say, Hugh, from GED to PhD, right? It's the same process because we want to get to the core of who you are as quickly as possible. So we're going to ask you to be authentic and transparent. Let's take off the mask, right? Whatever credentials you have, those are great and they've probably served you well, or maybe not. What we wanted you to do now is put that aside and let's get to the work that we're going to do together and open up something new for you.
So if we say, Jeff, we're pulling that together, you're quickly getting below the waterline with people, right? And taking their masks off, right? That's really the crux of what you're doing in your behavioral superpower coaching.
Sure.
So if I took that to the next level of what is Jeff Morris's identity, and the identity being where your strategic impact is in the world, how would you position that for you?
So for me, this is the difficult work that we all have to do, right? I call it mirror work. You wake up in the morning and go, hey, who am I looking at today in the mirror? Do I love me or do I hate me? Right? Am I lying to me or am I being truthful with me? And so I look at behavioral identity on multiple levels. And this is some of the questions that we ask in our training when we're looking at specific identities. I ask the question, because this is in the guide to unlocking behavior, what 3 words would you use to describe yourself? Right? Accuracy, precision, right? Analytical for me, right? The next level is, what would your family say about you? What 3 words would they use to describe you? And that answer. And then the next level we get to is, what would your colleagues say about you? So now we're establishing multiple identities that come together to make one, right? Who do I think I am? Right? Who does my family say I am? And then what's my opinion of, what's the opinion of those that I work with? And that really helps me get to the core of who I am and tells me what work I need to do, because we all need to do work. None of us have it all together all of the time, right? Even those that are most secure have some part of their identity that's insecure, right? So I'm excited about this concept of behavioral identity and how we continue to flesh that out and work with the youngest, right, from GED to PhD and the work that we're doing.
So, but would you, in your mind, analytical is a word. You're competitive, you're very quick paced, motivational. But do we land it around the behavioral superpower coaching, or do we put it more at getting below people's waterline?
I say it's a combination of both, Hugh. As we look to coach, right, we're also educating, and we're also providing some mentorship in there. That's why I say we coach, educate, train, and mentor. It's a combination of all 4 of those things. Like if I'm coaching, as a coach, I'm devising strategy, right? Clients may come with some issues, and we're accepting of those issues because we want to own that issue, right? We don't want to avoid or deflect that issue. We want to own that issue. But my job as a coach is not to allow you to stay there. Coaches devise strategies to win. Like we accept, right? But coaches devise strategies to win, right? When we look at mentorship, we're providing some type of guidance. And if I'm not your mentor, I may tie you to a mentor. When we're looking at education, we call it motivational educator. We're going to give them some tools. We're going to motivate them, right? But motivation only lasts a little while. Like when I was a marathon runner, we say those who are motivated only run about 5 miles. Those who are inspired finish the marathon. So what we're trying to do in our motivational education piece is, yes, motivate you, but we're trying to aspire you to a new level by giving you some tools that allow you to get to the core of who you are, find your strengths, manage your struggles, and get to the place where you can say, hey, this is who I am, what I do really well.
Because getting below the watermark line is really only the first step. Then you've got to come up with this, help them come up with a strategy to see the possibilities of what they could become once they know that.
Yes. It's the concept of ongoing feedback, right? When we look at how we coach people, it's not one touch point that gives you information. We talk about the levels of progression. We talk about the information level or the learning level, and we talk about the application of the information. Then we talk about the progressive nature of being able to integrate the information into multiple parts in your life. How do you now integrate this behavioral identity into your finances? How do you integrate it into your career path? How do you integrate it into your family, right? And we use the quality of life profile for that, because now it's progressively being integrated into those areas, into that profile. And then last, we talk about having a mastery level of this knowledge. So it's integrated now. It's part of who you are, and you don't have to think about it. It's muscle memory, right? So I think that's probably the answer you're looking for.
Yeah, so it is. But I just want to piece it together. What do you see as stronger for you? Is getting people, quickly getting below the waterline and getting them to see what's below the waterline and face up to it? Do you see that as a stronger part of what you do in your service, or is it helping them come up with the strategies to, in a way, inspire themselves to keep on growing and be the best of who they are?
I'd say it's the latter, right? Really helping people get very quickly to the issue of what's working below the waterline and what's not working, and unmasking that very quickly so that we can devise strategies. Right? Without that, it's hard to devise a strategy unless we first get below that waterline, that first step.
So I think it's getting below the waterline is the stronger part.
Yes.
Quickly. So,
Yes.
I think your impact with people is going to be around that. It's
Yes.
getting people below the waterline with their behavior, including their money behavior, so that they then can be positioned to set up the strategies to move forward.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I think that's the part that I was trying to get to. If you said, I think it was Kenyatta's terms of kryptonite,
Yes.
and using Superman, your kryptonite is in that, for you, is in that area.
Yes.
Which is going to be probably asking in a way, the piercing questions.
Yes.
Because the people in my life that I feel like have impacted me the most have been those that have asked me a key question at the right moment.
Right.
They've not always been my best friend. I've always known they were always somebody who cared about me. There was some mentoring or coaching role or advisory role going on.
Right.
Or leadership role.
Right.
But on the day I needed it, they asked me a question.
Right.
And I took that internally, and then I went and did something with it, whether it was somebody asking me what was I passionate about, did I really want to do an MBA, or be an entrepreneur. I got asked these key questions that, it was only one question.
Right.
But that set me on the path to change. And that's happened a number of times over the last, I suppose, 30 years or 25 years when I've gone through those life transitions. So to me, Jeff, it's very powerful to be able to get below the waterline of the person quickly.
Yeah. So
they know how to do it.
You're talking about questions, Hugh. We practice something called Socratic methodology for DreamSmart Academy. It's hoping, as a coach, we may know something, we may know where we want a client to go, but we can't push them there, right? They have to go on their own there. So through a series of questions or through a series of insights, when they get to the place where we want them to go on their own will, it's transformational. it's hard to go to sleep at night when you get a person there.
Some people are going to make the immediate jump. Others are going to take longer. And
Yes.
You've got to be, as a facilitator, you've got to be intuitive enough to know where that person's at. That's part of the gift.
Yes.
In doing this, because
Yes.
you can't also just ram your way to the bottom of below the waterline. You've
Right.
got to safely do it. And sometimes there's going to be a blockage along the way.
Sure.
And it takes time. For others, you'll get there quick.
Right.
But I think if you understand those things, you'll win the person's trust to be able to do it.
That's what I was going to say, Hugh. As I've seen it, is you really have to be able to quickly establish trust, right? And we take it another step further. We talk about developing high trust relationships, right? Where both parties feel like they're mutually being supported to connect in a high trust environment. And now some of the baggage or some of the mass that we have up really high, we can maybe drop it a little bit and now begin to get to the waterline issues that we're talking about.
And that's what lets you in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up here, Jeff, have you got any other tips for our listeners to this conversation today that you would like to give them? It can be anything. It could be a movie to read, to listen to or watch, a book to read, podcast.
You know what I'm gonna tell you to do? You got to read this. You have to read this right here.
Well, I appreciate you putting that up there because you didn't have to. As I said to Kenyatta the other day, we actually are on the shortlist for a literary award for that book. So it's having impact out there. There are a lot of people that like it. That's come from readers. So it's fantastic. So thank you.
I think it's fantastic. I got it and I couldn't put it down. And our clients now, it's part of as we train, they have to buy this book because we'll refer to page 31 or page 54 or page 76 in the book because it's kind of our Bible, right, for behavior, written by both Hugh and Lee Ellis. It's amazing, the book itself. So very powerful.
And I think if people read the book, there's enough stories in there and touch points in there, they will discover, they'll be hitting the head a little bit as they go along in their own time. And then you can step in and ask the key question to reinforce something for them or get them to think even deeper. And
absolutely.
And so that's the power of having a book like that.
Well, Hugh, that's exactly right. Before I go, I want you to just talk to me a couple of minutes about my unique profile of being this pioneer, analytical. I know Leon has talked to me about it before, but there's a little bit of uniqueness in my profile. How would you coach me up in my profile?
So the way I look at it is you need to continue being very disciplined with building business plans, whether it's for the company, strategic plans for the individuals that you coach and getting them, but also to realize that, Jeff, you're extremely driven and not everybody will go as fast as you want to go. Right. And that sometimes is just putting the brake on the pedal here and there. Sure. I think is also making sure that you keep some life balance for yourself. In other words, you keep in check what you're prepared to sacrifice for success in your own life. You're very successful, but sometimes we all can, and I fall foul of this too because I have some of the same traits of going too far. And when do you just give yourself a bit of a rest, right. Give the team a bit of a rest, just slow it off a little bit. And always, I think when you're coaching to people, clearly getting below the waterline with them is a superpower for you, but is to remember that every now and again you're going to tread on something prickly with somebody, and it's just to back off and give them space. But it's also having the confidence just to keep to hold your space and to keep on going with them. Yeah. You're also a more reserved person, in that whilst you like to spend time with people doing workshops, training, one-on-one sessions, you need to ensure that you give yourself a break. As a reflective thinker, you need to have that quiet time to re-energize.
Mhm.
And that needs to be part of your schedule
Absolutely.
to do that. Doesn't mean the brain's going to sleep, but you might need a little rest from people at times.
Right.
So I think they're the points that I would, be working with you on, if I was your coach. It's just keeping you on that fast track, but every now and again knowing when to put a brake on.
Absolutely. Well, Hugh, I'm honored, my brother, that you've taken the time to interview me, and I'm excited, and I continue to do good work because of the work that you've done along with Lee Ellis.
Well, you and your team, Jeff, are inspiring us, and we're looking towards the West Coast more and more, and we know you're all there, and I love the fact that you've got the behavioral finance piece baked in, because I think that part's what's also getting a big day in the sun.
Yes.
And keep on building that behavioral sciences division, because the world needs it. All the communities you operate in need it, and they need to be inspired by leaders like you. So thank you, Jeff, for spending time with me, and I'll look forward to more in the future.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.